In 1985, Robert Ballard stared at a sonar screen in the pitch black of the North Atlantic. He wasn't just looking for a lost ship. He was on a top-secret mission for the U.S. Navy. The Titanic was just a cover story. What many overlooked is that this secret mission led him to a discovery so profound, he's only now revealing its true dark meaning. It's not about the ship. It's about what he found at the site. A chilling secret that proves the official story of the Titanic is a carefully crafted myth. A target of opportunity, Robert Ballard is a name known around the world. He's the man who did the impossible. He found the unfindable. In 1985, he located the wreck of the RMS Titanic, 2.5 miles beneath the surface of the freezing North Atlantic. It was a discovery that stunned the globe and made Ballard a legend. But here's the thing, his entire expedition was a lie. This is the first part of Ballard's confession, a secret he was forced to keep for decades. You see, Ballard wasn't just an oceanographer, he was also a commander in the United States Navy. And in the 1980s, the Cold War was at its absolute peak. The U.S. Navy had lost two of its most terrifying assets, the USS Thresher and the USS Scorpion, both nuclear-powered attack submarines. These subs hadn't just vanished, they had imploded in the deep ocean, taking hundreds of American sailors with them. What many overlooked is that the Navy had a desperate top-secret need. They had to know what happened to those nuclear reactors. Were they leaking radiation into the Atlantic? What did the wreckage look like after a catastrophic implosion? They needed eyes on the ocean floor, so they turned to Ballard. He was the one man pioneering the use of deep-sea robotic vehicles. The Navy agreed to fund his new technology, but there was a catch. He had to find their submarines first. The Titanic. The Navy couldn't have cared less. To them, it was just a rusty old passenger ship. Ballard agreed. He found the Thresher in 1984. He found the Scorpion. He documented the wrecks, gathered the Navy's secret data, and confirmed the status of the reactors. His mission was a success. But Ballard is a very smart man. He had a plan of his own. He knew the locations of the lost subs were near the suspected search box for the Titanic. He went back to his superiors. He told them he had completed his mission. But then he added a brilliant twist. He said, "The world is going to wonder what I was doing out here. If I just go home, the Soviets will be all over this spot. But if you let me search for the Titanic, that's the perfect cover story. It's the greatest hiding in plain sight operation imaginable." The Navy, seeing the genius in this, agreed, but they gave him a strict deadline. He had only 12 days left on his mission clock, 12 days to find a ship that had been lost for over 73 years. The thing nobody tells you is that when Robert Ballard set out on his famous Titanic expedition, he was already exhausted. His primary mission was over, and he was running on borrowed time. This secret mission, however, gave him the one clue he needed. While studying the wrecks of the Thresher and the Scorpion, he saw how they had been torn apart. The ocean currents had carried the lighter pieces, creating a long, massive debris field. He realized everyone else had been searching for Titanic the wrong way. They were looking for the hull, a needle in a haystack. Ballard decided he would look for the haystack itself, the 15-square-mile trail of debris the ship must have left behind. This secret mission gave him the key, but it also prepared him for a darkness he never expected. 12,000 feet down, the research vessel Nor cut through the dark waves of the North Atlantic. Down below, tethered by a thick cable, was Ballard's secret weapon, Argo. Argo wasn't a submarine. It was a 12-foot, 2-ton robotic sled, bristling with sonar and high-definition cameras. It was designed to be towed, mowing the lawn back and forth over the seabed, sending live images back to the ship. Inside the Nor, the control room was a small, dark space, lit only by the glow of video monitors. The team worked in shifts, staring at a grainy gray-blue screen, showing nothing. Just mud. Mile after mile of empty, desolate mud. The pressure was immense, and not just from the 12,500 feet of water above Argo. Ballard's 12-day deadline was evaporating. Day 5 passed. Day 8. Day 10. The mood, to put it mildly, was grim. The crew was exhausted. They were on the brink of failure. And then, in the early hours of September 1st, 1985, it happened. A new man had just taken over the watch. He was staring at the screen, fighting sleep, when something flickered. It wasn't mud. It was something man-made. A trail of debris, twisted metal, a piece of wreckage, then another, and another. The control room was instantly electric. They weren't just seeing debris, they were seeing coal. Thousands of pieces of it, scattered like black confetti. Ballard knew they had found the trail. They were in the haystack. Now they just had to follow it. For hours, they pushed Argo forward, following the trail of coal and metal. The debris got thicker. Then the sonar operator called out. He had a massive target, a wall. The cameras on Argo strained in the darkness, and suddenly, the screen filled with an image that defied belief. It was a perfect circle of rivets, a massive round object. It was one of Titanic's boilers. The team erupted. They had found it. But Ballard was silent. He knew what a boiler meant. It meant the ship had been torn to pieces. It had been a violent, catastrophic event. He ordered Argo to keep moving. And then, at 2:20 in the morning, almost the exact time the Titanic had slipped beneath the waves, the abyss finally gave. Up its ghost. The Argo's lights hit something impossibly large. It was a wall of black steel rising from the ocean floor. The robot's cameras panned up, and up, and up. There it was, the sharp, knife-edge bow of the RMS Titanic. It was covered in rusticles, strange icicle-like formations of iron-eating bacteria, but it was unmistakably the ship. The anchor chains were still in place. The railing of the forecastle deck was bent, but visible. The control room was silent. There was no cheering. Ballard would later say it was as if they had stumbled across a ghost. The team just stared, mesmerized. They had found the ship, but as they guided Argo over the wreck, a new horrifying mystery emerged. The ship wasn't just broken, it was wrong. But what they saw on the hull wasn't what the history books claimed. A crime scene, not a wreck. For 73 years, the world had accepted one story. The Titanic hit an iceberg, which tore a massive 300-foot gash in its side. It was a simple, brutal act of God, a single fatal wound. But as Robert Ballard's Argo drifted along the starboard side of the wreck, he was looking for that gash. And he couldn't find it. This is the second and perhaps most critical part of Ballard's confession. The gash doesn't exist. It was a myth. As his cameras scanned the hull, they didn't find a long tear. Instead, they found something far more disturbing. The hull plates, the massive sheets of steel that formed the ship's skin, were buckled. They were bent inward, and the seams between them had popped open. The Titanic hadn't been cut open. It had been unzipped. Ballard and his team were stunned. This wasn't an act of God. This was a failure of engineering. Later analysis of steel and rivets brought up from the wreck site confirmed Ballard's horrifying discovery. The ship had been betrayed by the very things that held it together, its rivets. The thing nobody tells you is that the Titanic's builders, Harland and Wolff, were in a huge rush. They were building 3 massive Olympic-class liners at once, and they were running out of the highest quality No. 4 grade steel rivets. So, for the bow and the stern, the parts they knew would take the most stress, they used the good stuff. But for the long middle section of the ship, they cut corners. They used cheaper No. 3 grade iron rivets. What's the difference? These cheaper rivets were full of slag, a glassy residue that made them brittle, especially in the freezing 31-degree Fahrenheit water of the North Atlantic. When the iceberg grazed the side of the ship, it didn't slice the steel. It delivered a series of massive hammering blows. The good rivets in the bow likely held, but the cheap rivets in the midsection, they popped. The heads snapped off like buttons, and the sea poured in through 6 separate narrow openings. But the corporate negligence didn't stop there. The steel itself was a problem. Modern steel is made to be flexible, but in 1912, their steel was high in sulfur, which also made it brittle in the cold. So, when the iceberg hit, the hull plates didn't bend. They cracked. Ballard's discovery transformed the Titanic story. This wasn't a noble tragedy. This was a crime scene. The ship was doomed by arrogance and greed. The owners, White Star Line, wanted a ship so big it would dominate the competition. The builders cut corners to meet the deadline, and the result was a ship that was fatally flawed before it ever left the dock. The iceberg wasn't the weapon, it was just the force that exposed the built-in weakness. The ship, under the immense stress of the sinking, had literally torn itself in half, just as some survivors had claimed. The stern had ripped away. imploding as it sank, scattering debris for miles. This was the haystack Ballard had found. It was the explosive evidence of a catastrophic structural failure. The twisted steel was shocking, but it wasn't the most haunting thing he found. The fight against the scavengers. As Ballard and his team began to map the massive debris field, they left the main wreckage of the bow and stern. They entered a different kind of place, a place that Ballard would later call a cemetery of souls. The ocean floor was littered with the personal belongings of the 1,500 people who had perished. There were unopened bottles of champagne, their corks held in by the immense pressure. There were stacks of porcelain dishes, still neatly piled. There were bed frames, toilets, and the ornate metalwork from the grand staircase. But then, Argo's lights fell on something that stopped everyone's heart. A pair of shoes. They were women's shoes, lying side by side on the mud. Then another pair, a man's work boots. Then, most heartbreaking of all, a small pair of shoes lying next to a larger pair, a mother and child. This is the third and most personal part of Ballard's confession. The real finding wasn't the ship at all, it was the people. You see, at that depth, the human body dissolves. The bones are consumed by the sea, but the leather of the shoes, tanned with tannic acid, is something deep-sea creatures won't eat. The shoes were all that was left. Each pair was a tombstone, a silent marker for a life that had ended in that exact spot 2.5 miles above. For Ballard, the mission changed. It was no longer a technical survey. It was a solemn human event. He and his crew held a memorial service on the deck of the Nore, high above the wreck. He placed a plaque from the Explorers Club on the Titanic's bow. He vowed that he would never take a single object from the wreck. To him, it was a grave, and to take anything would be an act of desecration. This vow would define the rest of his life, because as soon as the world knew where Titanic was, the scavengers arrived. Treasure hunters in deep-sea submersibles descended on the wreck, not to honor it, but to plunder it. They ripped open parts of the ship, grabbing artifacts to sell at auction. Many people are crazy about these artifacts. They pay millions for a plate or a piece of coal. But for Ballard, this was horrifying. He called them grave robbers. He spent years lobbying the United States Congress, begging them to pass a law to protect the Titanic as an international memorial. He saw his real discovery, that human cemetery on the ocean floor, being desecrated for profit. This, he says, is the Titanic's second tragedy. The first was the sinking, born of greed. The second is the plundering, also born of greed. The ship that was a monument to arrogance in life became a piggy bank in its passing. Ballard's discovery was a warning, and his final confession is that we are not listening. The final confession, his last warning. Robert Ballard is now in his 80s. He has spent a lifetime plumbing the dark, crushing depths of the oceans, finding everything from the lost fleet of Guadalcanal to the mighty German battleship Bismarck. But he is, and always will be, the man who found the Titanic. And as he reflects on a life of discovery, his confession is not just about the secret Cold War military mission that served as a cover for his search. It's not just about the cheap substandard rivets he found, which proved the shipbuilders cut corners. His real confession is a warning, a dark prophecy delivered from the abyss. At the end of the day, Ballard says, the Titanic story isn't really about an iceberg. That's the sanitized story we tell our children. The real story is about us. It's a chilling tale of arrogance, unchecked hubris, and the kind of corporate greed that calculates human lives as acceptable losses. It's about a society that was so pathologically in love with its own technology that it dared to call a 46,000-ton steel behemoth unsinkable. It's about a captain who, pushed by the insatiable demands of the White Star Line's owners, raced through a known ice field at a reckless 22 knots. It's about wireless operators who were so hopelessly busy sending Happy New Year and having a wonderful time messages for the wealthy first-class passengers that they contemptuously brushed off the final critical ice warnings from other ships. "Shut up, I am busy," one operator famously replied, sealing their fate. Ballard found the evidence, the cold, hard proof lying in the eternal silence of the seafloor. The cheap rivets are the smoking gun of corporate greed. The secret Navy mission to find lost nuclear submarines, which he used as a front, is the proof of our own modern obsession with secrets and military power. The shoes, the heartbreaking pairs of leather boots, and women's heels resting on the mud are the ghostly proof of the human cost, the only tombstones for the 1,500 souls who vanished into the frigid water. But these facts are just the surface. When you follow the dark threads of this corporate crime scene, as Ballard himself has called it, you find theories so wild, so sinister, that they are dismissed by the very establishment that had the most to lose. What about the fire? Experts now point to evidence that a massive coal fire was raging in one of Titanic's bunkers for weeks before it even left port. The hull plates in that section, they argue, were already superheated, brittle, and compromised. The race across the Atlantic, then, wasn't for a speed record. It was a desperate, panicked gamble to get the ship to New York before the fire tore the vessel apart or exploded. The iceberg didn't sink the Titanic. It merely delivered the killing blow to a ship that was already dying from its owner's criminal negligence. And what if it wasn't even the Titanic? The most forbidden theory of all, the one that reframes the entire disaster, is the switch. Titanic's sister ship, the Olympic, had been in a collision and was a financial disaster, a damaged, leaking liability. The theory whispered in hushed tones is that the owners, with the backing of their ultimate financier, J.P. Morgan, swapped the ships. They sent the damaged Olympic to its doom, painted with Titanic's name, to collect a massive insurance payout that would save the company from bankruptcy. It gets darker. What if it wasn't just about insurance? What if it was about removing obstacles? On board that fateful voyage were three of the wealthiest and most powerful men in the world: John Jacob Astor, Benjamin Guggenheim, and Isidor Straus. And all three were vehemently opposed to J.P. Morgan's plan for a new centralized banking system, what we now know as the Federal Reserve. All three men were personally invited by Morgan. All three men died. And J.P. Morgan himself? He canceled his own ticket at the very last minute, claiming illness. A coincidence? Or the most elaborate, cold-blooded assassination in modern history? A corporate crime scene that changed the financial destiny of the world? This is the abyss Ballard stared into. He saw the ship of dreams, but he also saw the Californian. The other ship stopped in the same ice field, close enough to see the Titanic's distress rockets. The Californian's crew watched them, speculated they were company fireworks, and then did nothing. The captain went to bed. Was this just staggering incompetence, or was it something more sinister? Was the Californian ordered to stand down, to be a silent witness to a pre-planned execution? Ballard's final warning, the truth he really found, is that we haven't learned a thing. We are still the same arrogant society. We still cut corners for profit, whether it's in our financial markets or our industrial plants. We still ignore the warnings, the icebergs we see plain as day, whether it's the looming specter of climate change, the instability of our financial systems, or the fragility of our global supply chains. We still believe, truly believe, that our new technology, our new unsinkable systems, will save us. The Titanic is not a dusty old story. It's a mirror. Ballard's discovery wasn't just finding a shipwreck, it was finding a prophecy. He brought the truth to the surface, but, as he says, the world preferred the myth. They preferred the romantic, noble Hollywood version with its star-crossed lovers. They rejected the dark, gritty reality of a corporate crime scene, a potential mass assassination, and a chilling tale of human indifference. The Titanic wreck itself is now disappearing. An iron-eating bacteria, Halomonas titanici, is consuming it, breaking it down. Scientists predict that within a few short decades, the main structure will collapse into an oxidized, unrecognizable pile of rust. The evidence is being erased. But the lesson Ballard warns will last forever. His confession is simple. He found the Titanic, but the world has not yet found its meaning. He showed us the proof of our own self-destructive nature, and we turned it into a blockbuster movie. Ballard revealed the truth, but was it a secret mission or a corporate crime? Maybe the real secret is still down there. What do you believe? Let us know below. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more hidden stories.